debating late at nights. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm currently a provisional medicine student at the University of Queensland.
Awesome. Thanks, Ishak. And Amelia?
That's a pretty hard act to follow, but I'm Amelia Mackey. I graduated the same year as Vishak, so 2020, and I got a ATAR 99.3. I'm currently studying, I'm also doing provisional med. I'm doing Bachelor of Biomed as my undergrad. And like about me in general, I used to swim in high school. I really love that. I did that for 10 years or so. I still swim now. And yeah, outside of school and study, I just enjoy hanging out with friends and, relaxing and things like that.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Now on to our Victoria team. We have Felix Zhao and Elena Cruz. So Felix, would you like to introduce yourself?
Cool. Thanks, Emma. Hey everyone, I'm currently a third-year biomedicine student at the University of Melbourne. I graduated from an ATAR of 99.6 back in 2019. Some fun facts about myself. I did 3 Year 12 subjects in Year 11. Pretty hectic time back then. In terms of weaknesses, I am deathly allergic to cats, but I am strangely addicted to it. So if I'm going out and walk, I will literally deviate from my run to pet a cat, and then 5 minutes later, like my hand is red. My life motto is, if you leave everything last minute, it will only take a minute. I think that quote is cut off a bit at the end there, but it says it will only take a minute. Focus about that. I wouldn't recommend my life motto, but it's a good one to have.
Awesome. And Elena?
Hey all, so I'm Elena. It's great to be with you guys today. The 411 on me, in Year 12, I took English, Methods, Chem, and French. And then I took 2 accelerated subjects, so German and drama in Year 11. I then graduated as the dux of my high school with an ATAR of 99.6, 2020 graduate as well. I also got a Raw 50 and a Premier's Award in English, which was nice and fun.
Awesome.
Academics aside, what you need to know about me is I'm a massive nerd. I geek out way too much about fandoms and weirdly anything to do with like English grammar. And I love to travel, rip to that one right now. But nowadays I'm working teaching German at Saturday school, as a Year 12 English and Chem tutor, as the Victorian State Consultant for KIS Academics, and I'm studying at the University of Melbourne.
Awesome, thanks so much. And finally, our New South Wales team. So we've got Josh Goldsmith and Lily Black, both studying at ANU, which is super exciting. Josh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Josh. I graduated in 2018 with an ATAR of 99.85. As for sort of hobbies and stuff, I really enjoy learning languages, playing classical music, nature and hiking. And yeah, I'm currently at ANU, about to start an honours year in physics. Yeah.
Pretty impressive. Okay, awesome. And Lily?
Hi everyone, I'm Lily and I'm a 2020 HSC graduate. So for Year 12, I studied English Advanced, Extension, Modern History, History Extension, SOR2, Echo and French. And I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Laws Honours and a Bachelor of International Relations with a minor in French at ANU. And I'm also involved in debating, mooting and UN Youth Australia.
Awesome. Cool. So that is our introduction to everyone. I didn't put a slide to introduce myself because I'm just hosting, but I'm the events manager at KIS. So I'm the one who put this together, and I'm just super excited to have all of our panelists to give you guys heaps of insights. So the first panelist that we're going to have speaking is Felix, and he's going to explain to us a little bit more about how the ATAR is calculated, because I know a lot of you would probably be wondering that, considering it's such an important number. So over to you, Felix.
Thanks, Emma. So let's kick things off with a quick summary of how ATAR is calculated and hopefully answer some common misconceptions along the way. So the ATAR itself is a number telling you how well you have scored in comparison to the rest of your state. For example, an ATAR of 80 means that your combined total of study scores are higher than 80% of the state. That is the same reason why it is impossible to achieve both a 0 or 100 ATAR, because it's literally impossible to say you scored higher or lower than 100% of the state, because it's not impossible or not possible, sorry, to be better than yourself. Now for the other states, it's a little different, but the gist is the same. For example, the combined total of study scores is known as the aggregate for Victoria. It is calculated by taking the top 4 scale study scores of the VC journey, as well as 10% of your scaled study scores of the 5th and 6th subjects. So for other states, that might differ just a little, but we'll go through that as we go through everyone else's speeches. So if we flick to the next slide here, we're just looking at example student A. They've done these 7 subjects. And what we're going to be doing is taking the top 4 of English, Methods, Chem, and Biology, and then taking the 10% of the 5th and 6th subject there. And that should be a 4 there. My apologies there for stuffing up that slide, but the total should be 163.6 aggregate points. And so that will be the aggregate and the number that our system for Victoria will use to calculate your ATAR. If we flick to the next slide, that number will be given to us by a certain chart, and this chart will change for different states, and based on different years, our numbers will change. But the row we're looking at is that circle in red over there, where because we have scored an aggregate of 163.6, that lands us at a 92.65 ATAR, meaning that our combined study score is higher than 92.65% of the state. Cool. So we've got some time to answer a couple of questions now, so feel free to ask me absolutely anything other than the answer to life. Yeah, thanks. Ask away, please.
Awesome. So yeah, people put some things through in the Q&A, but whilst those are just coming through, we had some pre-asked questions when we gave out the tickets to this event. So the first one is, I'll open this up to the floor. What does everyone consider a good ATAR? How do you measure that?
Lovely. So I might answer this one first. So that is an amazing question, but I'm afraid that's something that everyone has to decide for themselves. For some, a good ATAR is one that is high enough to enter their dream uni course. For others, it might be an ATAR that earns them scholarship. At the end of the day though, your ATAR is not a number telling you how smart or how much work you've put in. It's a number telling you how you're able to mold yourself into the education curriculum that somebody or some council has decided. So I'm sorry, but I can't give a definitive number there, but what I can say is that it is a really subjective thing. It is whatever you decide it to be. Hope that helps.
Perfect. And now I'm going to aim this one towards Amelia and Elena. You guys have some insight into how KIS sort of runs and so forth with your more executive roles that you have at the company besides from just tutoring. Why do we find it so important to advertise our ATARs then if it's not some be-all and end-all number?
Elena, do you want to go?
Sure, I can just jump in with my little bit quickly, which is that aside from working as a tutor and getting into uni, I've never heard of a situation where you need to use your ATAR. So it has a lot of hype surrounding it because it's like, yeah, you use it to get to uni. But even then, there are like pathways where you can circumvent having a really high ATAR. However, parents, first of all, aren't always on board with that and they don't get it as much as students do. So sometimes being able to advertise to parents that like, hey, our tutors have this certain ATAR is a way to also get parents on board because they're not at school. They don't really live the subjects. They don't understand necessarily how the ATAR works. I know I had to explain it to my parents 50 million times. They probably still don't know. So that's kind of the first reason that comes to my head about why we use an ATAR line like that. It's mostly just so that we get people who aren't like students on board. But I think the ATAR is overhyped because unless you're working as a tutor, you probably don't need to put it on a job application.
Yeah, that's so true, so true. Does anyone else want to add anything about the ATAR that they received? Was it higher or lower than you expected? And how did that kind of impact you or your life going forward? Does anyone have anything to say about that?
I actually think like after I got my ATAR and obviously applied to uni, I think if anyone brings it up in conversation, other than that, like other than someone directly asking them, it's a bit like, it's like you don't need to bring that up unless obviously you're advertising for tutoring or it's for uni. But I definitely think at the end of the day, especially looking back now, 1 year out of school, at the end of the day, it is just a number and it serves its purpose in getting you into uni or for us as tutors, you know, obviously advertising that, not just that we got these scores, but more so we were able to get these scores because we developed the study skills that were necessary, and that's more what we're advertising. So yeah, I definitely think that's what the ATAR's purpose is for, and it should just stay at that.
Yeah, perfect. We've got a a question coming through in the Q&A now. So I'll answer this one live. Anyone can jump in with what you want to add, but I know Vishak is going to touch on this later, so maybe if you want to answer. Can you still get into the uni course you want even if you don't get the minimum ATAR that the uni advertises from the year before?
Yes, and thanks for asking this question. You definitely can. There are a variety of pathways to get into the university degree. So don't think that the pathway that everyone advertises on the university homepage is the only pathway. It's not the be all and end all. Especially when it comes to universities, they make a lot of concessions for people who face disadvantages, whether it be socioeconomic disadvantages. There are a lot of other additional pathways for women in STEM fields and women in engineering. There's a lot of pathways for rural and Indigenous students, especially in the medicine sector. And there are a lot of other ways to get into university than just straight out of high school. So say if you finish high school and you don't immediately get into the university degree that you initially expected to, that isn't the end of the line. You can always continue to do a bachelor's degree and then transfer into the university degree of your choice from there. So yeah, there are many different pathways to get into the university degree. Another thing to note is that universities only advertise the ATAR requirements from the previous year, and that isn't a 100% accurate indicator of the requirements for this current year or the next year of applications.
Yeah, awesome. A little personal anecdote that I have is that one of my friends had gotten a super high ATAR and really wanted to go to law at UCID and didn't make the cutoff for that year, but the ATAR was lower the next year when he reapplied with his ATAR, and he got in, did a semester of it and decided he hated it. So your ATAR is not the be all and end all, and that's kind of how I wanted to finish this section of the presentation. Our next section that we're going to move on to is for our Qce system. Now I know this isn't going to be relevant to everyone, but it is a new system and you might just be interested in what it's like. So stay tuned, and Amelia, over to you.
Yeah, so I don't know how many Queenslanders we actually have on the panel today, but I will get into it. So basically the Qce system is Queensland's secondary education system, and it basically comprises the coursework that you do in year 11 and year 12. We actually recently got a bit of a facelift with our education system here in Queensland. In 2019, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, they got rid of the OP system and they brought in the ATAR one, jumped on the bandwagon like Victoria and New South Wales and all those other states. But basically in our Qce system, we have a 4-unit system. It's made up of formative, which is units 1 and 2 that you do in year 11, and also summative, which is your units 3 and 4 that you do in year 12. So at the conclusion of these 4 units, the goal is to get a QCE, which is your Queensland Certificate of Education. So that's like your high school diploma, and also an ATAR. So in order to do that, you have to pass, like you've got to achieve a satisfactory in units 1 and 2 in year 11, and attain a minimum of 20 units from 20 units from units 3 and 4. So most students typically do 24 units, which like sums up to 6 subjects. So if you're doing 6 general subjects and you pass all of those, you'll achieve 24 units at the end of year 12. And you'll see that on your like QCAA website. It'll come up and say satisfactory, yes, 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 and show you all your scores. So in year 12, a little bit about the assessment that you do. Typically there's 4 pieces of assessment per subject. This does vary, and I know in mine and Vishak's year, obviously with COVID, we had a little bit of a different experience. They actually got rid of one of the assessments. You can argue whether that made it easier or harder for us, but typically there's 4, and that's comprised of 3 internal assessments that you do, and then also 1 external assessment, which is the one that everyone freaks out about. That's the external exams. So in most subjects, you'll find that the 3 internal assessments account for 75% of your total grade, and then the external exam will account for 25%. In certain subjects, for example, maths, so general maths, specialist maths and methods, it accounts for 50%, and that's the same for sciences. So that's why, especially for people who are choosing to do, like, for example, 3 sciences, 2 maths, it's a bit daunting when you get to the end of the year and they've got all these 50% exams that, you know, definitely will account to a lot for their ATAR. In terms of ATAR and scaling, I'll touch on that a little bit. I know Felix has just gone over it, but I'm not going to go too much into it. Just that when you're choosing your subjects, I really, really want to reiterate. I don't know if anyone here is in year 11, but it's so important to do the subjects that you enjoy and not the subjects that you think will scale high, because this does change from year to year. If you have a look at the scaling report, for example, from my year, a lot of people choose languages because they think languages will scale high. And then the Chinese one, which is supposed to be the hardest language to choose, actually scaled down. So just choose subjects that you enjoy and try your hardest in them. And yeah, obviously ATARs are ranked in Queensland. I just want to highlight a little difference. It's not based on your 5th and 6th subject. It's not 10%. We only just take the top 5 subjects that you do. And then your 6th one is a grade subject, so it doesn't really account for anything. In saying that, don't at the start of the year just decide that, you know, methods is going to be your grade subject or English is going to be your grade subject. You should try hard in all your subjects equally, because you never know what that scaling is going to do, whether, you know, it'll push one of your subjects up or another one down. Okay, so that's pretty much all I've got to say on ATAR scaling and the system. I've just got a little bit of advice for you guys, for those of you who are going into year 12 in the Qce system. The biggest thing to note is understanding what each assessment task is asking you to do. I'm sure Bashak can agree with me here that the ISMGs that they offer you are notoriously ambiguous, and the sample assessments that are on the QCAA website aren't that great. Honestly, you know, you could do it exactly as the sample assessment is showing you to do, and you still might not get that top mark that you're looking for. So the biggest thing that I can tell you guys to do is to use resources and reach out. So ask your teacher if there's anything else that, you know, ask for lots of advice on assessment. If it's an English task, ask them for a lot of draft feedback. If you have a tutor, ask them to read through sentences and ask if there's anything that you could do better on that. And make sure you maximize the marks that you get in your internal assessment as well, just because those external exams do have curveball questions, and you do want to make sure that you're going into it with as many marks as possible just to account for that. In saying that, the external exams are a lot less daunting if you start preparing earlier. So I know everyone's got a different studying strategy, but I started preparing for those probably when I was probably 6 or 8 weeks out from exams. That's when I started cracking onto those, you know, practice exams and things like that. And in terms of syllabus, working your way through those dot points methodically and making sure you understand each dot point is really, really important, because you might skip over one and be like, well, that one doesn't really matter. It'll get to the exam and it'll be a question on that one. So you've just got to make sure that you're covering all your bases and for the external exams. And finally, just a little piece of advice from me. Make sure that you don't sacrifice, you know, your friendships, your social life, and your mental health when you're in year 12. This is the biggest thing, and we see it so much as tutors, and especially having gone through the process. We know that like year 12 can be super, super stressful for you guys, and it feels like there's so much weighing on this one number that you're going to get at the end of the year. But it's so important that when you look back on your year 12 year, you're not just thinking about all that study that you did. You want to think about all the good experiences that you had, whether it be your formal or hanging out with your friends or having all your last swimming carnivals and things like that. So just make sure if you're having any difficulty balancing that social life, you know, friends and study balance, you reach out to someone, whether it be a tutor, a parent, or a school counselor. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. So from that, let's open the discussion. Having the new system be so new and you just haven't got into the ATAR, if people do want to find out more information, or even just when they're getting like resources online or tutors or that sort of stuff, how like much would you recommend sticking to stuff that's come in from the new system, or is using notes from older curriculums okay?
Well, I would say like using notes from the OP system is kind of like everything in the OP system is sort of obsolete at this point. it's not really applicable to the new system just because it was such a big change. They completely revamped all the syllabuses, all the assessment tasks. It's not really comparable in any way. So I would say if you're looking for resources and things like that, try to stick to things that have come out recently, well, since 2019 onwards. That's where you'll have your best bet of finding things that are applicable to the new QCE system. I do know that like now it's been 2 or so years since the system has been brought in. You've got, 2 years worth of graduates who have the experience and firsthand knowledge of going through the system. And we have an abundance of tutors who have just graduated this year as well, who, know exactly, they've got that experience under their belt. So in terms of resources, a really good thing to look out for is those, sort of our HSC discussion space. There's a bunch of those Facebook groups that are all about, and people share free resources on there, or they give advice on where to look for things. Or if in any doubt, like ask your tutor. I always know in my tutoring sessions, I'm always happy to share resources from when I went through the system. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yes,
Awesome.
and I'll add to that. Thanks, Amelia. Yeah, so 100% agree. I know like when you and I graduated, Amelia, we were like sort of the guinea pigs of the new ATAR system. We didn't really have any previous resources. And even now, like they have a lot more than we had, but it might not be as extensive as the other states. But one thing to also consider is that a lot of the Queensland syllabus for all of the subjects are codified into syllabus dot points. So have a look at the syllabus dot points and what exactly they want you to learn. And one thing that I found when I was going through grade 12 is a lot of the syllabus dot points overlap with other states as well. So I'll give a very specific example, especially with chemistry. There's a lot of overlaps with the Victorian system. So what I found myself doing to get access to practice resources was going and getting Victorian practice exams. And the Victorian government publishes all practice exams online for free for like the past 10 years. So I did like 10 years worth of practice exams from Victoria, which essentially covered about like 80% of the content that was on the Queensland exams anyway. So don't just think that just because you're studying in the Queensland system, you have to only study in the Queensland system. But with that being said, it's very important to look back to those syllabus dot points because they'll test you exactly what's on the syllabus dot points. And it will be a little bit of a waste of your time if you're trying to study with efficiency, going and doing other state syllabus without consolidating those syllabus dot points and double checking that those syllabus dot points are still covered in the other states.
Yeah, awesome. That's some really, really good advice. And thank you to our panelists who have been typing answers to questions that have been coming up in the Q&A. I know we're getting quite a few about extracurriculars and doing things outside of school. What can you do to boost your like acceptance into your uni and so forth, and that actually leads us on perfectly to our next section. So we're going to talk about mental health and balance in year 12. So this is a little bit of a different tangent from the actual hard and fast rules of what you have to do, but I think it's super important to talk about, which is why we've included, it'll talk about extracurriculars and balance and that sort of stuff. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Josh, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm going to talk about sort of mental health and just sort of how to keep yourself generally happy and well in year 12. And the way I'll do this is I've come up with sort of 5 general recommendations or general principles, which I think can really help you get a bit of mental health and balance in year 12. So for me, the first and most important thing is to have some kind of a motivator. So if you have a kind of goal in mind, a reason why you're going to be putting in a lot of efforts, it's going to make studying so much less draining, so much easier. You're going to be asking yourself questions like, why am I doing this? What's this for so much less? And yeah, you'll just be a lot happier studying in year 12, which you'll probably be doing a fair bit of. And that motivator could be getting into a particular uni course. It could be that you find the content itself that you're studying really interesting, which was the motivator for me a lot of the time. It could be, making your parents happy, just proving yourself to yourself, or beating a sibling, big, small, serious, not so serious. Just having a goal or a motivator in mind, I think is just really key for mental health and just general well-being in year 12. My second recommendation is something that some of the other panelists have touched on. It's to not only study, do other things. It could be sports, socializing, having a romantic relationship. For me, it was friends and all, just socializing and being in the school orchestra in year 12. You can overdo it as well. And if you take on too many burdens and too many responsibilities in year 12, that can be a source of stress in and of itself. So you can overdo it, but yeah, definitely don't just sort of laser focus only on the academic aspect of life in year 12. And then I think the third thing to acknowledge is that you're going to have ups and downs in year 12. There's going to be moments where everything's going super well. Maybe you're kicking your sort of academic goals and stuff, and you're feeling really great. On the other hand, there'll be, other times where maybe some assessments haven't gone as well as you would have liked. Maybe there's external life stresses. And yeah, and these periods can be sort of tough. Things like breakdowns and panic attacks and unexpected periods of bad health that, will not be kind of unique to you. There'll be other people going through your struggle. For me, the most sort of stressful moments of year 12 was developing an RSI like a couple of days before paper 1 and paper 2 of English, and where you have to be writing sort of non-stop and stuff. And yeah, just the whole sort of process about, being able to take some breaks in an exam and getting approval for that a couple of days out from the external exams was sort of super anxiety and stress inducing. But, we got through it. It was all right in the end. But yeah, that was my personal bad period. And then my fourth point sort of leads on from that. In sort of stressful times and hard times, don't be afraid to talk to sort of friends and parents. If there are medical issues at play, don't hold back from seeking out assistance from doctors or psychologists. I think, yeah, guys in particular have a tendency to bottle it all up and to not, channel their negative emotions or not deal with their negative emotions in the most productive ways. And so, yeah, just don't be afraid to seek out a hand. And then my fifth point is also something that's been touched on. Your final year results really aren't the end of the world. Doing well in your final year is, it's obviously useful. It allows you to sort of do what you want more quickly than, say, alternative pathways a lot of the time. But in Australia, we're really lucky in that there are a lot of alternative pathways. The best example that I could think of is the sort of law one, where you can, at University of Sydney, for example, to get into law, you need an ATAR of 99.5, or at least you did when I was looking at university courses. But you could also get into law through getting an ATAR of 85, doing arts, and then maintaining a distinction average in your first year. And yeah, like, aside from that, if you look at most sort of successful and eminent people, they aren't necessarily the people that were the most academic or the people that got the highest marks in university. So yeah, don't put everything on how well you do in year 12 and stuff. And yeah, that's sort of it for me on mental health and balance.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. A lot of that was insightful. Now, I'll open this up to the floor because I feel like a lot of people will have different things that they want to say about this. But everyone has said, oh, don't drop your extracurriculars, don't sacrifice your friendships. Why? Why is that important? Why is it so golden to have those things outside of study? Because it's not going to contribute to your ATAR, or like, how does that work? What does someone want to say about that?
I can answer this one if you guys don't mind. So in year 12, I was like the biggest go-getter. I'm still the same now. I've always loved like doing everything I possibly can do. I had 2 part-time jobs. I did 2 competitive sports, and obviously I wanted to keep a social life. And half of that was, obviously I didn't want to sacrifice those things that I'd really been enjoying doing all throughout high school just for that one number that I'm going to get at the end of the year. But also it's an important consideration, especially for those of you who might be doing, a degree that has an interview component. For example, like I did a lot of medicine interviews at the end of year 12. They are looking for someone who not just has those really high scores, they're looking for a very well-rounded person, someone who can balance that, because in a degree like medicine, where you're going to be studying for the next 7+ years of your life, you need to make sure that you have, outside activities that you can still balance with your study and enjoy them as well. And obviously it's for your own good as well, like your mental health. For example, when you do exercise, your body releases endorphins and that makes you feel good. And I know for me personally, like going to swimming training after school and being able to have 2 hours where I didn't have to think about school or anything like that, I could just swim and focus on that black line and just relax, that was, you know, a good outlet for me to not have to stress about anything. So that's why I think it's still important to keep up those extracurriculars, keep up, you know, your engagement with your friends and things like that when you're in year 12.
Yeah, awesome. And does anyone have an experience that they want to share about when something came up in year 12 or something didn't quite go right, maybe a health issue that they want to talk about or something with a friend and how that affected their study? Were you able to come back for it? What happened there?
I'd love to
Anyone?
jump in just with a quick anecdote. I'm someone who did what you're not supposed to do in year 12. So on one hand, it was kind of taken out of my hands. So I did year 12 in 2020, as mentioned. So my social life stopped. I'm terrible at maintaining friendships sort of online through text and things. I am a known introvert. So as someone who likes my own personal time when I'm meeting with people face to face, suddenly only being able to socialize online just really like kicked my introvertism up to a new level. Also, my job stopped because it was in person and I was kind of like suspended without pay for a year because they didn't need me online anymore. So without my job and kind of social life, I did exactly what you're not supposed to do and kind of only had VCE to focus on. And I can let you know that what that creates is this really kind of feeling of bitterness and resentment towards VCE or your subjects, even if you once liked them, maybe now you don't. And that in turn, it kind of creates this paralysis. I didn't want to study anymore. In fact, I spent 3 whole weeks where I didn't study for SACs. I didn't do any homework. I barely rocked up to classes because they were all online. So I can assure you, please go out and do things that aren't year 12 stuff. Go and do things that take your mind off of it. Go and talk about anything except the subjects you're studying. Have some sort of outlet, even if your outlet is angrily mowing the lawn, as one of my friends did. Do something to really like try to relieve your stress and to take your mind off your subjects. Because as someone who didn't and who kind of fell into that pit hole of only focusing on your scores and your school, it's actually ironically easier to do well if you take more time away from school. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's a really easy trap to fall into if you say, I'm going to do self-care when you know that you're just procrastinating. You kind of have to walk the line of actually judging when you really need a break and when you just don't want to do something. But if you become good at acknowledging when you actually do need a break and you do need a rest, it's much, much better for you and much more productive for you to actually step away and give yourself what you need.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing answer. I totally agree. A little anecdote from me personally is I ended up in hospital with a stomach ulcer during trials or mock exams, whatever you call them in your state. And I wasn't able to do half of them. I'd been studying for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it didn't happen because I stressed myself out so much that I ended up having to get estimated marks because I was literally in hospital, unable to do anything. So it's not worth it. It's not worth your health. It's not worth the risk of that balance, and then you'll actually be able to sit the exam and accomplish something rather than not being able to accomplish anything and just having to sit there and feel sorry for yourself. In terms of extracurriculars that we've been talking about heaps in this section, do you think that there's an advantage of doing something specific, keeping with what you're doing, trying new things, or is it just kind of each to their own? What you want to do it? Or yeah, because I know people say choose subjects that you like. Is it the same sort of thing for extracurriculars for most of you guys?
I might jump in here just because all my extracurriculars seem to be of like a similar vein, which I think is more of like a personal choice as opposed to me just like picking stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, this will look so good for unis when I apply for this degree. I think that, you know, if you do get to a point where you're applying for like scholarships or like programs where you need to do interviews, I'm sure Amelia can talk about this more with like medicine, but like they want to see extracurriculars that you personally are like enjoying and super interested in and passionate about. Like I think that once you get to that like level, they can kind of tell what you're kind of just doing just because you think you have to. I don't think that you should be doing anything unless you truly are like interested in it and, you know, have a passion for whatever it is, whether it's work or volunteering or sport or, you know, debating. I think especially if you're spending extra time that you could be, you know, studying or doing something that, you know, seems important. You don't want to be, you know, spending time on something that you don't actually enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good response. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to say about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. And yeah, 100% agree with Lily on that, that don't do things just because you think it'll look good in your resume. And the reason why I say that is because the people who you're trying to impress by this, they can so easily see through it. Like in med school interviews, when people ask you what your extracurricular experiences have been, it's very easy to tell whether someone has just done an extracurricular experience just for the sake of saying it in the med school interview, or even in other interviews outside of medicine, like if you're applying for scholarships or you're just talking to future employers, they can so easily tell and so easily see through that you were just doing it to make it look good in a resume. So don't do things for a resume. But one thing that is quite unconventional that I'd like to add is I would highly encourage everyone here in the audience and people who are watching this recorded later to do stuff that they don't think that they would enjoy, right? And although that this might seem a little bit unconventional, the reason why is because you don't know whether you truly love something or you don't unless you try it out, right? So a personal anecdote that I can give is something that just happened recently over the summer. So I'm a provisional medicine student, but I thought I'd sort of expand myself and learn things outside of what I was currently studying, just to see what the world was like outside of my medicine bubble and really see what other pathways are available. So I did a little bit of volunteering at a legal clinic nearby. And it was really insightful to see how the different ways of thinking, it was really interesting to see different ways of thinking and how like lawyers think so differently to doctors. And I learned so much, and so many things that I learned from there, I'm taking back to my studies. So do things not to put on a resume, but do things so that you can grow as a person. And one thing that will really surprise you is how many doors can be opened just by doing something right now. So you might find what you're doing in terms of your extracurriculars right now the most pointless thing, but don't be discouraged, because sometime in the future, somebody will ask you about an experience that you can bring up. So I would highly recommend doing things that you would have never tried before. And now's the time where you can branch out and start to develop those other interests outside of like your main passions.
Awesome. Okay. There's some questions coming up in the chat, but I think you'll have that pretty much covered with typing the answers. Please, if you're watching this and you want to look at some of the other questions that's been asked, please do look at the answered section. But for now, we're going to move on to our VCE system, little 411, as Elena would call it. So Elena, over to you.
Great. So, hey guys, I'm back clearly with a little spiel on how VCE works. Hopefully by now you're all familiar with the idea that there are 4 units, 1-2 which you take in year 11 and 3-4 in year 12. Obviously, to guide your learning across these 4 units is the almighty study design, which exists for each VCE subject. Now, I know, the study design is always ridiculously long and wordy and seems like the assessors are just trying to show off what they know. But don't dismiss it. You don't need to treat it like the Bible either, but if you've ever wished that you could just see into the assessor's head and wonder like what they're actually testing you on, this is it. Like this is literally a list of everything they're allowed to ask you questions about. I do recommend trying to read it despite its ridiculous length. It can be useful to you. Now on the study design, there are several areas of study. So these are essentially your key umbrella topics, which you'll cover throughout the year. And then these areas of study will be tested throughout the year in the form of SACs, your school assessed coursework. And then of course you have your end of year exams, which will test all of this content as well. That shouldn't be new to you guys. At the end of the VCE process, you'll receive a study score out of 50 for each subject you took, as well as an overall ATAR. And again, I think that won't be new for you. Your study scores are taken from your SAC and exam marks. And then as we've heard, your ATAR is taken from your study scores. So some people then ask, well, why do we get 2 sets of final marks? Pretty simple answer. As you've heard today, different states use different scoring systems. So study scores are kind of like your Vic mark, your Victorian mark, and then the ATAR is obviously nationwide. So that provides a source of ranking across the country, not just across your state. Something which is always a bit controversial, but what we have to address is scaling, which depending on your subject is either a massive bonus or the bane of your existence. Someone who took a drama folio subject, scaling was the worst thing ever. Your raw study scores are scaled according to several factors. And these are kind of the perceived difficulty of the subject, how desirable it is in that year, how many people took it in your year, and also the spread of marks. So how well everybody who took it in your year did in that year. Clearly, as has been harped on today, scaling is really subjective. It changes from year to year because it's based on so many different factors. So trying to play the scaling game is really risky. And I much more recommend picking a subject you like, because if you like it, you'll work harder at it, you'll allocate more time to it. And if you do well enough, it won't get scaled up or down anyways. So definitely pick something you like rather than something you think will scale highly. However, the general scaling rules, I do have to put this out there, STEM subjects and languages tend to scale up and arts humanities tend to scale down. Obviously, there are a few different exceptions to this one. Scaling confuses people, not only because of how it's calculated, but also because of the fact that like the exact amount by which a score is shifted will change, like even within the same subject in the same year. So essentially, let's say you get a mid-range study score, like full scaling will apply to you. So the maximum number your subject could be scaled by that year is how much your score will be scaled by. But if someone taking the same subject who got like a 45, their score will be scaled by less, even though it's the same subject in the same year. So basically, the higher you score, the less your score will then be scaled by. Again, this is why scaling confuses a lot of people. It's because there's a lot of variation that doesn't really seem to follow any rules. The last thing we have to cover for VCE is the role of the GAT. So this general achievement test, that's what it stands for, is usually taken pretty early on in the year, and it measures your general knowledge and skills. So in written communication, maths, science, technology, humanities, arts, and social sciences. I know it sounds like a lot. When you get it and open it up, it actually kind of looks like an IQ test. It has a lot of similar types of questions. During the GAT, you have to write 2 essays in half an hour each, as well as complete a 2-hour multiple choice section. Now, this sounds really daunting to people, but you can rest assured, marks from the GAT won't directly alter your study scores, but they're kind of used to assess your capabilities as a whole. And therefore, they're going to be used to check that your SAC and exam marks reflect your capabilities as a whole. So if there's a large gap between what you were getting on your SACs throughout the year and then what you got on your exam, they can actually use your GAT results to kind of mediate your final score and find something in between. It's basically a third source of assessment they have of you, so that they're trying to use that to find out what your real capabilities are. Also, bonus, if you end up not being able to sit your final exams because of some sort of extenuating circumstances, then they'll use the GAT to create a derived score for you. It's a bit of a speed run overview of the key points in VCE. Hopefully it helps. Now we probably still have some time for questions, so we can get onto those now.
Awesome. Okay, so I think that was like a super good rundown on the VC. And if we don't have any questions, I do want to dedicate this time to something related, but a little bit less related than directly about the system, studying. Study routines. I never established a great one. I just kind of studied when I felt like it and what I felt like. Did anyone actually have like a really good routine that they want to share, or like tips and tricks? Do you want to get up early and study, or is that a waste of time? Do you like, what did everyone do? Open to the floor. Does anyone have anything to contribute about this?
So I think like with this, on this topic, the right answer as to a study routine is going to vary from person to person a lot. Yeah, so I mean, I was never one to have a super kind of well thought out routine and stuff. But I definitely had a couple of techniques or sort of things that I did that enhanced my study. So one of them was not studying in my room. I was making sure that I was studying, say at the state library, or just in a space that wasn't, you know, the space that I was going to be spending so much other time in. And I think that led to a lot more kind of focused study and stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you're the sort of more organized type, then like routines are really good. But just find what works and try some stuff out. Yeah.
Yeah, did anyone else have something that they wanted to say?
I definitely had, sorry, Elena, do you want to go?
No, jump in, go for it.
I definitely had quite a structured study routine in year 12. I just knew, like, from how I studied in year 10 and year 11, I knew that if I didn't have a structure for year 12, I just wasn't going to do anything and it was going to be all over the place. So I'm glad that I knew myself that well to force myself into actually formulating something that worked. But for me, what I did, I basically had a plan for, particularly for the 6 weeks leading up to external exams. I had a plan for each subject, obviously in the prioritizing by when the exam was soonest. And I would do something for that subject each day. So for example, for English, our external exam for my school, the set text was Hamlet. So every day for the 6 weeks leading up to the external exam, I had this giant list of like practice exam questions that could possibly come up. And I'd write a plan, and in that plan, I'd have like, thesis, topic sentences, and then the quotes that I wanted to use in each of my points. And then it became part of my routine. Like every day I'd almost look forward to writing my little plan, which is weird, but I'm an English nerd, so that's probably why. Also having that routine, I think helps definitely for people like me that otherwise I'm just all over the shop. So for example, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Anki, but for really content heavy subjects, Anki can really help you nail those concepts and make sure you're remembering them. For example, in chemistry in Queensland, we have to do reaction pathways, and it was literally the bane of my existence. I hated reaction pathways. I didn't even want to think about it, but just every night I'd work through 20 flashcards. And by the end of, when my exam came up, I could remember them without even thinking about it, without using too much brain power. So definitely, making use of those kind of resources are really helpful for me.
Yeah, just conscious of time. I think we're going to have to cut that one off there. Obviously, there's heaps more to be said. I think a key takeaway is just hold yourself accountable. I did that by tracking how many hours I'd studied. So at the end of year 12, I had 1,016 hours of outside of class study. And I knew that, and that was how I held myself accountable. But studying in a different room is one way, and having a good plan is another way. So yeah. Our next section that we're just going to have to zoom on to is our HSC rundown with Lily. Lily actually has COVID at the moment, so please be kind to her. Hopefully she's feeling up to it. So yeah, everyone make her feel welcome, and over to you, Lily.
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to do a quick overview of the HSC and how it works. I'm sure most of you who are doing the HSC probably have a good understanding of, like the general kind of aspects, but just a quick overview. In year 11, you have to do a minimum of 12 units. In year 12, you're only required to take 10. Regardless of how many units you take, only the best 10 units will count towards your ATAR, including 2 units of English. When you receive your marks back, your overall mark per subject is made up of 2 things, your internal assessment mark and your external HSC mark. Each make up 50% of your overall mark for your course, except it's slightly more complicated than that. Your raw internal marks are never really given to NESA because naturally each school's internal assessments have different levels of difficulty. So 90 at one school could be an 80 at another. What does get entered is your rank within your cohort at your school. From there, once NESA gets all the HSC exam marks back, they start to record your internal assessment mark. What NESA records actually is like a corresponding mark that someone from your school got in the external HSC exam. For example, if you ranked first in your internal assessments, your internal mark would be recorded as the top mark someone in your school got in the external HSC exam. Pretty complicated, I know. Basically, all you guys need to remember is 1, you want to try and outrank everyone in your cohort in the internal assessments. Then once the internals are done, help everyone for the external exam so everyone's marks gets bumped up and you basically have the best shot you can at doing well. And 2, NESA doesn't touch your external HSC mark, only the internal. So regardless of how well you went in your assessments during the year, your performance in the actual HSC marks can really change your ATAR a lot. Now let's talk about the ATAR. So 2 units of English will always count towards your ATAR, even if it's your worst subject and you're doing 12 subjects. But this is your 2 best units of English. So if you do extension 1 and you mess up your advanced exam, extension 1 will count and half of your advance will also count. Now, I'm sure you've heard the word scaling before when it comes to the ATAR. So imagine you get a 94 in chem and a 97 in legal, and you're doing 12 units, and the 94 in chem is your lowest mark of your subjects. You'd be pretty smart to have 94 in chem as your lowest mark. But you'd assume that the legal would be counted as part of your best 10 units because you got a 97. However, the chem might actually be counted instead because chem is deemed a harder course by UAC, who calculates the ATAR in New South Wales, thus kind of scales better. There's a lot more to scaling, however, we don't really have the time to explain that right now. But my last piece of advice is not to choose a subject simply because it will boost your ATAR. Because if you don't do well in it, it doesn't matter how well it scales, it's just not going to work in your favor. Stick with the subjects that you enjoy, and I hope you find year 12 is a much better experience once you start doing that. Thank you.
That was like lightning fast and I loved it. It was so good. You covered everything. So let's get on to this discussion. Again, like with the VC, I'm just going to kind of do a little sidestep. And we've been getting a lot of questions about like burnout and motivation and going, like just keep going. How do you do it? Does anyone want to comment on this? Because I know that I definitely experienced burnout heaps. How did you guys get over that? Like what was your tips and tricks for that?
I guess I can go. I was definitely the person who believed in taking a week off at least in your holidays. As much as we love the idea of using holidays as like all that extra study time, at least having like a week or having a couple days where you can just sit and kind of forget about, year 12, forget about all of that. Because if you don't switch your brain off, then, you're just going to end up burning out. I guess also during the term, making sure that you're, like having days where perhaps you're taking a break from studying. Like I know that in my family, we're kind of big about having Sunday as a family day. So like on Sundays, I just wouldn't study. So yeah, making sure that you have little things like that. And even if you create like little rituals or like, self-care type of things, it's super important. But yeah.
I think a lot of what my friends and I did as well was after mock exams or trials, whatever you call them in your state, just like breathe, don't study for a few days, like just wait for your results to come back and then get back on the grind. It's not worth trying to push all the way from trials to externals. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, that would be my piece of advice. What does everyone else think?
Sorry, you go, Amelia.
Sorry, I keep interrupting everyone. I'm sorry. I feel like for me, definitely, I get burnout very, very easily. I still get it now in uni with like all my jobs and all my things that I do outside of study. So the biggest thing that I've learned is sometimes you just have to hold yourself accountable and realize that like this is your well-being that you are putting at risk. So you need to know the signs of when you might be reaching that burnout point where it's going to be affecting your study and your grades. I'm a big believer in studying longer does not necessarily mean better marks. So if you're sitting there, you've been studying for like 2 hours and you just feel like you're not getting anywhere and your brain's all jumbled and you just feel like scrambled egg up there. So when you get to that point, that's when you're just like, I've got to go to bed. I need to take some time out or a little break, something like that, because it's not always necessarily going to be more productive if you just push through it and keep going. Yeah, perfect. Josh, did you have something you want to add quickly before we go on to life after the ATAR?
Yeah. No, I'll just be really brief on this. I just wanted to kind of like agree with Emma on sort of after assessments being a really good time to kind of take a break and reset and stuff. Yeah, just in those couple of weeks after assessment periods or after trials or whatever, really like that's the best time to sort of just, not do a whole lot, muck around a bit at school, have fun, enjoy yourself. Yeah, that's it basically.
Awesome. Okay, so our last content sort of section for today is with Vishak, life after the ATAR, uni, all of those good things. No further ado, handing over to you, Vishak.
Yes, thanks, Emma. So life after year 12, you get into the real world, and this is where your life really begins, and that's what many people will tell you. But yeah, looking back on it, year 12 and just the general schooling system was some of the best years of my life. And I think it's very important while you're still in grade 12 to make the most of it and enjoy it. And I think like this is a common misconception between a lot of students. I think year 12 is just about ATAR, and I 100% disagree with this. And looking back on this, I really believe that year 12 is about developing as a person, growing and getting the skills necessary to succeed in life, not just only the scores. Obviously, the scores does help, but I think year 12 is a lot more. It's about developing yourself as a person, getting experiences that you might not get the time to get later on in life, especially with things like keeping on top of your physical health, your mental well-being, and getting involved in things that you possibly won't get opportunities later on. I think school is very unique because it gives you opportunities that you might not get later on. But let me talk a little bit about the timeline as to what happens after year 12 or what happens going into university. So in about September of each year, the QTAC, VTAC, UAC accounts, they open up to applications. And again, those are just the three states. So Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia has a tertiary education system, and so does Tasmania and Western Australia. So it really depends on the states that you're applying to. For me, I applied everywhere because I wanted to see what my options were after school. And I would recommend for people who are undecided exactly where they want to go, apply everywhere, because the more options you get at the end of grade 12, the more you can then select. And I think that that's a good position to put yourself in, being in a position to choose where you want to go at the end of grade 12. So apply everywhere. It never hurts to apply. And in September, this is when you get to start to think about your university degrees and your university preferences. You get to start to think about what you want to be doing after school, whether it be go to university or whether it be do whatever else you would like to do. And then comes November, and this is the end of external exams. And for a lot of people, it's probably the biggest amount of relief that they've felt ever in their lives. And it's really a weird feeling finishing external exams, because you get to the end of grade 12, you finish your last external exam and you walk out of the exam hall and you think to yourself that school is finally over. And for a short moment, you feel very happy that school's over. But then for the next few hours, even days, you really start to question what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And this is a question that, like, look, I'm still trying to figure out, and I'm sure everybody else is still figuring out, regardless of where you are. But yeah, it is definitely an interesting feeling. And then it gets to December, where your ATARs are released and the first round of university offers are released. And then you get to really start to pick and choose what type of university degree, and this is degree you go into, and this is like when you have to be making those final decisions. And in January, the subsequent offers for universities are released. So that's your second and third offer rounds, and offer rounds for interstate students. So typically for the QTAC, VTAC, or UAC systems, or wherever within the country you're applying to, they release offers to students within the state first. And then students from other states get offers in January. And then February, university begins. So that's when you officially start university. That's a little bit about the ATAR timeline as to what happens towards the end of this year and what you should be looking out for. So it's very important that you create accounts in QTAC, VTAC, and UAC to actually lodge your university applications to get into the degree of your choice. Right? But a little bit about life after ATAR and what actually happens. And I wanted to really start by prefacing this. And look, it's been mentioned earlier in today's panel discussion, but ATAR is just a number and it doesn't define the person you can be. And look, as Amelia perfectly summarized early on, is that nobody really asks for your ATAR. ATAR becomes an irrelevant number once you've gotten into university or once you've gotten where you need to be. And I think the best way to summarize this is that ATAR opens up doors, but once you've passed those doors, it doesn't really do a whole lot more after that. So I guess what's very important to know, especially for life after ATAR, is you shouldn't be just reliant on that one number. You should be defined by your character and learn the skills, interpersonal skills, to get to relate with people, have a lot of extracurricular activities, or engage with things outside in your life that you can bring to job interviews, to bring to interviews for certain university degrees like medicine. Because when you do get into the real world, or when you do get into university, you start becoming defined by all the experiences you had rather than the scores that you scored. And one of my very close mentors who really did shape who I am, he gave me this quote and it stuck to me today. So I want to share it with you. It's that people don't remember what you do, but they remember how you made them feel. And this is 100% correct. It's one thing that's important to know is that when people finish school and they start going into university, everyone's trying to follow their own paths, and they have a lot of their own problems that they need to solve, or their own issues they need to worry about. So they're not going to be keeping tabs on every single little thing that you do. What they will remember about you, though, is how you make them feel, how you interact with them, and what your relationships are with people around you. So really value the relationships and interactions you have with people, and don't waste any opportunity to make a new friend, because you never know when friends will be able to help you out, or you never know when you might benefit from knowing certain people here and there. It's definitely true. It's more about who you know and a little bit about what you know than the scores you get. And again, school is the perfect opportunity to learn how you socialize. And look, I can't go without saying that I learned more outside the classroom in school than I did inside the classroom. Inside the classroom, I learned how to score highly, but outside the classroom, I learned how to excel in interpersonal relationships. So really take the opportunity in school when you have a full cohort of friends around you. You have younger students, older students, and so forth. When you have this opportunity to go interact with different amounts of people, then definitely take this opportunity to learn different skills. And a little bit about your options after school. So once you graduate and you start university, you become very independent. People don't tell you what to do. They don't tell you what you should be doing. You get a lot of freedom. But again, this freedom can, for some people, be very dangerous, because I know for me, I really like having a strong structure. I really like knowing what I'm going to be doing. So it's very important to balance this independence and freedom with accountability, because the only person responsible for what you get up to after school is yourself. There's no teachers telling you what to do. There's no parents like supervising every little thing that you do. Although, you know, your parents would still be heavily influencing you after university, they wouldn't be necessarily having the same structured interactions that they did within school. So it's really up to you to make the most of it. And I really would encourage everybody listening to this to make the most of every opportunity they come across. And I think just by going with a yes attitude would really help you infinitely, right? So whenever someone asks you to get involved, or whenever there's an opportunity that pops up, say yes, right? If you don't like it, then you don't like it. You can always quit later. But it's always good to try new things. That's what I 100% believe in. And a little bit of a fun fact: the average person has 12 jobs in their lifetime. So don't feel like the decision you make at the end of grade 12 as to what career you go into has to be a final decision. Like, I don't think society will put it on a bunch of 17 or 18-year-olds to decide what they're going to do for the next 60, 70 years of their life. So really take this next step, knowing what you want to be doing at this stage, but don't necessarily feel that you have to be locked into it, right? You need to take time to discover what your passions are. And when choosing a career, you need to make an informed choice, knowing what the lifestyle of your career fully entails. And there are multiple pathways after school. So do what you enjoy and pick a career or pick a university degree that allows you to expand your horizons far beyond anything that you currently know. And that's what I would recommend about going into the real world after school.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vishak. That was like an entire, lots to wrap my head around, but lots of really, really good advice, which I wish someone had actually told me, because I hadn't actually considered a lot of that. So really, really helpful. Obviously, we've got a little bit of a time now, but I'm happy to continue answering questions if our attendees here want to continue asking things. I can see stuff still coming through in the chat. I know that if any of you are interested, the split on this panel today, Lily and I are doing law, but then Felix, Amelia, Josh, and Vishak are all doing sciences, and Elena's doing humanities, so an arts degree. But I know what I want to do when I graduate. I've always had like a plan. I've been one of those annoying people who've known my whole life plan since I was like 10, but as Vishak said, probably won't stick to it. Did anyone else like really struggle to decide what they wanted to do after high school?
Yeah, definitely. I graduated year 12 with the idea of absolutely hating medicine. But because I had a good enough ATAR, all of my family and my friends were like, you should do medicine, it's the perfect degree for you. And I hated the idea. I was absolutely disgusted by blood. Every time I had a blood nose, I was like, ew, what is that? Not actually, but I hated the idea of medicine and how much work I need to do to get into it. So, but I was still interested in science. So I decided to a bachelor's biomedicine at the University of Melbourne, just to see where it takes me. And I wasn't hoping to get anything out of it other than a taste for a potential field I could work in. And what happened was, after studying about medicine-related subjects, I actually developed an interest in medicine. So I did a complete 180 from the idea of hating medicine to loving the idea of medicine. And now I'm really gunning for medicine now. So I absolutely agree with the idea that There is no way that people should be expected to know what they want to do for the rest of life after completing year 12, or even in the university of years after year 12. It takes a long process. For some, it takes a lot of years. For some, it may come instantly. Everyone is different, so it is up to you to set your own pace and to follow it accordingly. Oh, I think you're muted there, Emma.
That's so awkward. I just said, yeah, that makes sense. That's really good advice. Did anyone else have something like similar, or have they taken a massive like right turn on what they're doing since they started uni?
Yeah, so I guess I finished year 12 thinking that I had sort of a good idea on the sort of thing that I wanted to do in the future. I was sort of set on kind of going into finance or whatever, and quantitative finance, investment banking, that kind of a thing. And then for whatever reason, I can't remember exactly why I did this, but I think for university, I decided, oh, I'll just try out doing pure sciences for the hell of it, because I kind of heard actually that a lot of the people hired for financial organizations come from like very quantitative backgrounds that aren't finance specific. And then, you know, I just kind of found that I really enjoyed physics and maths for its own sake. I actually hadn't done any physics in my final year of high school. And yeah, now I'm just sort of really set on doing something that pure sciencey later on. Maybe that's sort of being, you know, trying to be an academic or a physicist or whatever. Maybe that's just sort of, you know, using my physics knowledge in a field like medicine in whatever capacity. But yeah, I think, you know, what people sort of want to do and their ideas about the future change so much, just kind of with experience and their life at uni and stuff. And that's the case for me, at least.
Okay, awesome. The last question that I want to address live before we wrap up is this one that's just come through about how uni is structured. Now I know we've got a few ANU students, a few UQ, Monash. Elena, are you at Monash or Melbourne? I can't remember.
I'm at Melbourne Uni.
Melbourne. Okay, so we've got like a few different unis represented, and I think the easiest way to answer this is very differently to high school. And it's different across each uni, but I think especially I can speak on behalf of humanities, we have a lot of reading and then we go to class and discuss what we've read, whereas medical and sciencey sort of people, what I've heard is they have lots of labs and they have to be there and show up a lot of the time, whereas we do a lot of things by ourselves. So it depends what you want to do. Did anyone want to like comment on uni structure and how like it works? Besides from that, anything more specific that would be helpful?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer that. So for the question, how is uni structured? I guess the short answer is it isn't. So yeah, with university, they give you a lot of things that you have to do, right? So pretty much the way university is structured is at the start of each semester, you pick your courses or subjects, right? And typically a full-time load is just picking 4 subjects. So you'd only be doing 4 subjects each semester. And for each subject, like each week, they'll give you a bunch of things that you have to do. They'll like set out all your assignments and they'll set out all of your exams, but no one really holds you accountable to doing them. It's really up to you to do those assignments. And there isn't a set time which you have to do them except for before the deadline, of course. And when it comes to week activities, there are many classes, but you just have to pick which ones you can go to. So it ends up that in your first semester of uni, you can essentially schedule your entire weeks of uni just into 2 days. So you can possibly find the rest of the week to do other things. Or depending on the courses you're doing, some might be more intensive and have more contact hours, but typically with most university courses, if you do schedule your timetable correctly, you can schedule it just within 2 to 3 days within the week. Another thing to know as well is that university isn't as time intensive as school, because they don't require you to be there Monday morning to Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, all the way through Friday. Like they don't require you to be there, but they required you to do a lot of work outside of class. And I think that's where university becomes hard, because you need to take your accountability and you need to take the responsibility to get that work done outside of class time where there isn't a teacher telling you to do it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Independence is a massive thing in uni. It's a really big change. I know I went from doing a lot of study every week for year 12 to a lot less. But in terms of uni and so forth, we're always happy to answer more questions and so forth, especially if you have a tutor. Ask them, ask an older sibling or a friend that you know who's just gone through uni, because everyone's experience will be different and we've only been able to share what we know. And I hope it's been helpful. I hope you've been able to take something away from today. So I just wanted to say thank you all for coming and good luck for your year 12. I hope our advice has been helpful to some degree, and that you've been able to take something away from today. Did anyone have anything they just wanted to conclude with before we wrap up? No? Everyone's all good? Perfect. Well, I also just wanted to take a quick second then to thank our panelists for giving up their time to be able to share their experiences and pieces of advice. And I'm happy to end the seminar here. So thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at more events in the future.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.